Hello everybody, welcome back to KWT's Microsoft Outlook Basics course. Today we'll be taking a look at some of the ways you can customize other views within Outlook for calendars, contacts, and tasks. Calendar views, very similar to the email views that we looked at in the last module. There's some standard views that come with Outlook. You can customize these and make them work for you. There's some certain default types that are provided. Some default views are calendar, preview, list, and active. And the two types that are most commonly used within calendars is day, week, month, and the table views. So let's take a look at a couple of these. So if I go to calendar and the view tab, I can, again, same as it was with emails, I can go to calendar, preview, list, or active. Now the calendar type views, within that, once we've selected that type of view, we can change that to a single day, for a week, or a month, depending on what type of view you prefer to use. Now again, within the settings, only certain settings are available for this type of calendar view. You can adjust the columns, filters, other settings, and conditional formatting. These other ones simply are not applicable to this type of calendar view. Now, the only one of these that I really find useful is possibly conditional formatting, where you may want certain types of appointments to show up in a different color, just to highlight them a little more. So, for example, I may want to create a new one that is all of my meetings with Ian, and I want to make them all yellow, and I click on condition to say if it's got Ian in the subject field. I could also do it based on whether Ian is an attendee in the meeting and so on, but just for sample purposes, we'll just use Ian in the subject field. So we click OK and save all that. Now I happen to have a couple of appointments booked on Friday the 28th. So if I switch to day view so we can see them, there's my meeting with Ian, and it is now in yellow. Now later in the day, there's a meeting with Sherry, and it is still in the standard default blue. So you can assign a number of custom formatting for different types of meetings. And again, those more important meetings, maybe meetings with your boss or meetings with key stakeholders, you maybe want to highlight them from the rest of your meetings to make sure you don't miss them. Now, one of the things we want to look at before we go any further with views is this is a good time to take a look at your file options for calendar. There's a number of things in here that you may find useful. To start with, adjust your work hours. If you work from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., change your time setting to match what you normally work. That will discourage people from trying to book meetings at 4 o'clock when you really should be gone home. You decide what days you work. Most people it's Monday to Friday, but certainly if you are on a different shift and you work Tuesday to Friday, or maybe you're a lucky person who works 4-day weeks, do that. And again, that makes it very clear to people who are booking meetings that you are not in the office on Monday. Some other options in here, your default reminders are very important. They usually default to 15 minutes, but you might decide in your workplace people need more time to prepare for a meeting, so maybe 30 minutes is more sensible. But again, that's up to you and what works for you. On individual meeting requests, you can certainly override this, and we'll talk about that in further modules, how sometimes you will put 1, 2, and 3 day reminders on a meeting in your calendar for reasons that you want to prepare ahead of time for something. You can adjust permissions for what people see when they're looking to book meetings. By default, they will only see whether you're free, busy, or out of the office through the day so that they can book meetings in your free times. You can change these permissions so that they can see what those meetings are. I don't recommend this unless you're talking about giving those permissions maybe just to an administrative assistant who helps manage your calendar. I would not do this for the general public. You don't necessarily want them to see what your current meetings are about. There may be some confidential issues in there. You can play around with the colors of your calendar if you don't like the standard blue. You can also add a second time zone. So if you're one of these people who works internationally and has other offices that you deal with, you can add a second time zone that sometimes helps you manage those time differences when you're trying to book meetings. You can auto accept or decline meeting requests. And there's some rules around that you can select. Again, I'm not sure I recommend this. It is kind of a cool feature, but it can have some unintended consequences. I actually had one of my staff turn this on within our workplace. And initially, I was very impressed with his responsiveness. Every time I sent out a meeting request, I received back his acknowledgement and acceptance of the meeting right away. But then he started to miss meetings or be late to meetings. And that's when I realized he had the auto accept on. So he was not seeing the emails for these meetings. They were only showing up in his calendar directly. So if he wasn't watching his calendar and wasn't paying attention to his reminders, he was missing or showing up late to meetings. So use that one with caution. You can also show the weather app on your calendar, and that's kind of a cool feature. Nice to know what it's doing outside when you're stuck in an office. And of course, you can change your temperature to be in Celsius or Fahrenheit. So there's a few things you want to take a look at before you get started. You can see there's the weather app, and I happen to have it in Fahrenheit. Now, some of the other things you can do with views within Calendar. I can certainly, as I said, adjust the conditional formatting. You can change the columns, but as you can see, it's very limited for a calendar Outlook view, a calendar type view. So as a general idea, this particular view start and end date is really all you need to see. But if we switch to a view that is, if I just go to manage views for a moment, you'll see there's day week type, and then there's also a table type view. So what I have up right now is a calendar type view. And you can see it. This one allows you to change it from week to month and so on. But if I change to a table view like list, I will see my meetings in a list like this. Now, this is not very useful when trying to figure out where you need to be on a given day, but it is very handy with cleaning up old calendar entries. And we will be talking about that in a later module. So this is another option, and there are times when it's worth looking at your calendar entries via a list instead of via calendar. Okay, so let's move on to contacts. Again, same process. Outlook is very consistent when managing views. It looks the same across emails, calendar, and contacts. Slightly different types. Within contacts, your standard view types are business card, card, and table. Let's take a look at some of those. So now I want to go to people to see my contacts. And the way you choose to look at contacts is really a very personal thing. You will decide what you prefer. There's really no process benefits from using one to the other. It's really just what makes sense for you. But you can see here, if we go to view, and if I want to change the view, I have a number of views set up. Some of them are list-based. Some of them are card-based, so I see them more like business cards, or a condensed card, where I see it a little smaller boxes, or by phone number is another list view. Again, within each of these, you can see what's available for sorting and grouping, same as we did with emails, same warnings on filter. Only apply filters if you put something in the name that indicates this is a filtered view. So it's only showing me my personal contacts, or it's only showing me contacts who are associated with my hockey team. Whatever it is, make sure it is reflected in the name of the view. So you can decide what works for you in terms of contacts. Okay, so let's move on to tasks. Tasks, again, same process, same screens. Everything looks the same as it did in the others, and it's nice to have consistency. So you can find your way around one, you can find your way around another. Task views tend to be all table driven. So they are literally going to be lists of tasks. And as you can see, there are a whole bunch of tasks that are set up as defaults for you to start with, and then you can customize those. So let's take a look at tasks within Outlook. So this time we're going to go to our task list and go to view. And again, you can see there are a lot of types of views that you can use to start with. Some of these are filtered, and that's clear by the name. So completed only shows me completed tasks, of which I have none on this particular email address. Prioritize, that's going to have a sort method, so they are sorted by priority and then by category. To-do list, these are things that you need to do today or coming due soon. You may only want to see today's tasks, only tasks that are due today. So you can make use of these views to manage your workload. Tasks are extremely important. If you are using them, it is critical that you keep them up to date and keep them well managed. And these views can be very useful to help you sort out what it is you need to work with next. Certainly overdue. If there's anything overdue, you want to make sure you deal with it first before you then perhaps move on to the high, medium, and low priority tasks. So if you use tasks, you definitely want to take a look at the different views in here and make sure that you select and create views that will work for you and your method of working. Okay, well, that's it for today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you in the next module. That concludes this module.